We do not have the title data scientist at all before that. But after the large company like LinkedIn, they open this position data scientist. So all the companies, all the different business, they jump into this field. Basically, data science is big data and also machine learning from AI. We put them together so we can use data-driven strategy to solve the real-world business problem, including healthcare, including finance, including e-commerce. So I would like to define this as we use data science to solve the real-world business problem.
Yeah, so from my perspective, digital transformation is really different across all industries. So in our company, we work with healthcare, fintech, e-commerce companies, and each one of those industries has a very different definition of really what it means to transform. In some cases, they have to, right? If you're an e-commerce company, you're already more or less digital. But when we talk to our healthcare companies we work with, most of them have not digitally transformed yet. So in their case, that's a significant improvement opportunity to be made. So if you think of, and really it's at the point where every single company has to get to that point in order to even do business anymore. So another example would be the insurance clients you work with. There's an expectation in less than a few years that if you're not a digitally transformed insurance company, you're not even going to exist. People want to go online to purchase from you, to buy insurance products from you. So it's to the point where it's something that has to be done to even exist anymore across almost all industries.
So I hope this is on. Can you hear? For me, digital transformation comes in two forms, right? There's the internal transformation that has to happen for a company, and then there's the external transformation that has to happen for a company. So internally, many companies struggle because they don't really understand that it's not just taking the data that was in paper format or sitting in a file drawer or a process that worked one way and making it automated in a different way. That it gives them completely different opportunities for access to their customers, for dealing with their customers on an external facing environment, and also using information that is beyond what they have inside. And that is a big challenge for a lot of companies. So the ones that transform very successfully have a much bigger vision for how they themselves can operate in the world being digitally connected than the ones that we've been seeing actually struggling with their transformation. They're often in a catch-up mode and they never really catch up.
Yeah. So you come to a conference like this, you can hear success stories about things accomplished at companies like Capital One and Uber and some others this afternoon. What you don't hear, that maybe you hear in the hallways from the company that spent $4 million in 6 months and got no return on it. There's not much to present about that, but it's a more common challenge than people hear. I wonder if anyone has any advice on how to avoid that or how to set up your project for success from the get-go.
Well, for me, I teach strategy and I care about strategy. So for me, most people understand that they need something, that they want something that they don't have. When mobile happened, everybody kind of freaked out. They said, oh, we have to have mobile apps, right? If we have a mobile app, then our customers will be able to find us. And I hear terrible stories about companies that hire somebody else to help them build a mobile app, only to then discover that their customers never use it when they come into the store, or that people aren't taking advantage of the opportunities that they built for them. And is it because they didn't understand the needs of the consumer, or they didn't do anything to change their internal processes to help them align the two because they had no strategy in place? So a good example is, a retailer. I mean, everybody goes into retail stores occasionally, even if it's just to buy your groceries, right? The signage in the store versus the signage on your app don't match. The navigations that you can use with a mobile device aren't going to help you, the same way your driver, your Waze map is going to help your car navigate on the road. And most people don't understand how much time it takes to think through those things. And it's the simple things that undoes them, not the big things.
Yeah, I think to add to the example you provided, for my company, that example is actually very, very common. I think that most companies, not most, but a lot of companies seem to forget the first stage of building a product, which is digital strategy, product management, defining why you are building the thing that you're building. For example, there was a company building a law-related product that came to us recently. I'll try to keep it super. But at a super high level, the idea of it was to allow users to find a lawyer. And the agency they worked with was telling them, we need a mobile app. And we all know recidivism's a thing. People do have to get lawyers and someone, become, go back to jail again or something like that. But it's not something you're doing every day. So you really don't need a mobile app, right? So it's a strong understanding up front of what your customers are asking for, what they need, and then building that. And then building it in a way that's very agile, so you continue to learn from those users. You wouldn't believe how many startups you go to that you ask them, have you done a user test? No. Have you done like a voice of customer sort of analysis or design thinking where you get customers involved up front and get their thoughts? And the answer so often is no. So build something quickly, right? MVP, minimum viable product, which you most have heard of that. Test it, get feedback. Don't spend $4 million to realize, or whatever the amount is, to realize that what you built has no, commercial value or consumers don't want it. There's really no excuse for that if you're building quickly, testing, following an MVP model.
Yeah, when I talk with the speakers in our conference, and also when we are working with, as a consultant for either large company or startup company, we do see a lot of leaders when they build their, data-driven project. I think 3 things we need to take care. Okay, 3 things. The first, we need to define a clear requirements, business requirements. It's not too large, not too small, something under control. So I would like to see a lot of companies when they heard about mobile app, AI, data science, data-driven strategy, but they do not have a clear picture of what they want to do. Right? They have large-scale data set there, but they do not know how they can generate the business value on the top of that. The start part is, please define your business requirements. Very straightforward. Okay, enter your control. Not too much, not too small. The second thing is, I think it's the team. I see a lot of, it's a funny story, okay. Someone, not only one, called me, say, hey, Jason, we are building a team for data science. I'm trying to hire some data scientists. Can you shoot me an email, give me the job description? So how you can build your team if you do not how to define the role, right? That happened 2 years ago. Even the company from Silicon Valley, they do not how to define what data scientists do, right? So I think when we start a project, we need to have a clear plan. What kind of talent, engineers, scientists, data engineer. So how we can build the team. Then you have the talents who you can work with. The third thing is, I think the business, the development model. So agile, I totally agree with you. Something like, we do a small project and then we get the feedback, and then we, on the top of that, we do the second, project. It's called agile. So please, do the project as an agile model, so you can, control your whole, process for your project based on the, the developments.
So when it comes to something like AI, we're definitely at a peak of a hype cycle. But it's interesting because it's not just hype, there's a lot of transformative things going on as well. I didn't look at necessarily any specific demographics for this conference. There may be a few executives here, but I think for the most part it's people earlier in their career, maybe middle management, a few decision makers. Decision makers have it a bit easy because they could say, I have a vision for AI, let's go execute. But a lot of transformation is going to come from the bottom up, especially in new cutting edge technologies. Do you guys have any advice for someone in that position who is not a decision maker, but has an audience with a boss or a VP, and they want to bring something new and innovative to their organization?
Yeah, I would caution people to remember that whoever you work for probably knows less about how your model works than you do. They really only care what it's going to be able to achieve for them. And that means you need to learn the language of their business better. And that means you need to really understand what it is that is good for their business. So what is a good outcome for them? I spent over a decade in the financial industry, and it's one thing to be mitigating risk and making sure that you don't lose money, and it's completely different to figure out how to save money. And it sounds like the same thing, but it's not the same thing. And if you don't understand their business model, you don't understand where their opportunities lie, then you're not going to be able to deliver really good outcomes for them, and they're going to wonder why you're taking so long to do what you're doing. So I caution you and I encourage you to make sure you learn about their business or find someone who will teach you and work with them.
Yeah, I think with AI, it's, for a lot of business leaders, it's really a buzzword. I think a lot of people don't necessarily know what it means and what it can do for their business. So I think some education around that to business leaders is critical. It's not really about building sentient beings yet. It could be, but that's not from a business application perspective. It's really about building AI being used to provide incremental value, incremental improvements to business, save time, save money, improve revenue, things like that. So I think that's the first part of it. But then I think it's also convincing your leaders to just get started. So choose a really small something to try. Like, for example, there's a few good examples here. One would be chatbots, right? Chatbots have been shown, and I know we've been talking about this in this community for a few years, but they've been shown to reduce cost to serve, to improve customer satisfaction, but less than a quarter of enterprises are using chatbots. So convince, if it works for your industry, convince your leader to build a super simple version of a chatbot. Maybe all it does is answer a few questions like, you're in fintech, maybe it's, what's my balance, right? Have it build that, prove the success, and then go from there. You don't need to tell your business leader, like, I need $10 million to invest in AI right now, because you're going to say, heck no. Tell them I need X amount of money to do something that provides this sort of value, and then you can build off of that. You're not going to get a huge fund. You're not going to get huge funding right off the bat until you start to prove real results.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. So I think first of all, you need to understand their business process, how you can apply AI technology there. I have a story from one of my students. He's a PhD student for physics from UCR, University of California at Riverside. He got an interview for on-site interview for Snapchat. And the question is, do you have Snapchat set up on your machine, on your cell phone? No, I don't use Facebook and Snapchat. Then he failed the interview, right? So you know nothing about the social network, So how you can apply your knowledge, your skill set, your Python, all the machine learning things into their business process, right? So you see, Snapchat, okay, they are building a recommendation system. So I know this student very well because he's good at Spark machine learning library, and also he's really good at collaborative filtering. It's a recommendation model. But at Snapchat, their recommendation system is very straightforward. They recommend your friends' friends. Right? It's not the traditional recommendation system. So I would like to see when you talk with your boss, how we can leverage AI technology, try to understand their business process. The key problem they are trying to solve, right? So I think the first of all, we need to understand their business. And then the second thing is, please solve a small problem and using a very simple model. I see a lot of my students, they are trying to build so complicated model to solve the problem. But when you talk with your product manager, your VPs, they cannot understand what you are doing. Okay, so you have to use very simple model to solve the problem. That's my 2 points.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot changing in the AI space. We saw from our first speaker today a list of like 25 different services Azure alone offers kind of in this space, machine learning and AI. They're one of many cloud providers. Even though there's some parity, there's a growing sense of what's available, what the libraries are, the off-the-shelf tools, the cutting-edge research. It's more than one person's full-time job to keep up with all of that. So none of us are doing it. Do you guys have any tips on how you keep up and how you recognize what's an emerging technology?
Well, I've spent a lot of time working with people who are building collaboration tools. So collaboration tools are wonderful for keeping track of lots of things. So many people are familiar with Slack. Slack, one of its values is that it does allow you to keep track of what other people are doing at the same time. And that's a very useful tool that certainly wasn't as readily available in the past. The biggest thing you can do is to meet with your team pretty regularly and also find a way to connect with whatever social channels are available within your organization. Many of them have figured out how to put up some board of some kind in which you can find where the tools are or find out what, and also contribute to those boards. It's one thing to just, be the passive one saying, where is it? And another to helping other people find what you found useful.
Yeah, so in my company, next generation technologies, as we call it, is the backbone of what we do. It's a big reason why people come to us. So because of that, it's something that's sort of innate to all the employees that we have. It's part of our culture that it's very important to stay up to date on the newest trends. But more specifically, Slack is one of those ways. So most of us are on a lot of different Slack channels. Find some with each of you. There's a bunch of AI ones that I'm a part of, the team's a part of. We basically have mandatory sessions per month you have to go to, things like this. Trainings online, there's a lot of services that we pay for that all of us have had, webinars online. Also, just in the nature of our business, we're working with companies like all of you and have a chance to build the things that are the newest, but we also build our own products. So, we're building some AI products in HR, we're building some products in fintech. So it just gives us a really good opportunity kind of innately to learn and improve ourselves. But ultimately we have to, because that's what we're known for, is being on top of the next gen. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I spent a lot of time working with the students from business school. I think for my students, we talk about how we can leverage the cutting edge technologies to solve our business problem. So when we're working on this field, I think a couple of things. First, we need to find a best learning model. So far, what we are doing is, we get rid of the textbook. Okay, we do project only. So for when we learn a new technology, we ask students to do project, get the hand-on experience. So this is how the students they can quickly get into the technology. And the second thing is we need to talking with the expertise, like an AI engineer, like a data scientist from Google, from LinkedIn, connect with them to ask the ideas how they solve their routine problem. So we can use the same methodology in our business problem. So this is the second thing. The other thing we do a lot is it's like how you can use the team. So the team basically has three group of people. First, business, understand the business process. The second is technology, who know how to build that. And then the third one, I think, it's kind of, counterpart for the other two. They open, challenge them. Why you want to do that? Do you have better, solution? So we have these three group of people together in the project that will make things, much easier.
Yeah, it's an interesting area in teamwork. The former chief data officer for the White House, DJ Patel, I believe was, who originally said data science is a team sport. And that seems rather obvious when you kind of say it, but what does it mean? Takes a few steps of additional thought. Do you guys have any thoughts or experiences on the right way to develop the collaboration with both the data science team and the other people in an organization in order to be effective?
Sure. Yeah, so I think you can follow the Agile methodologies pretty well for that. So the experience I have is we do have a few data scientists on our team full time, and they're fully integrated to the different work streams that we have. They get a little bit of time to do their own research and stay up to date, but ultimately they're being driven by the Agile structure, which is product, having a product owner or product manager who defines the work that needs to be done and the vision for the team. The designers, user experience architects, developers, etc. So, as a team, they're just part of the overall Agile team that is out there to make some sort of progress and build something or build a bunch of things, right? So it's as a fully integrated group that I highly recommend. We've seen in some companies where it's off in its own corner, it's doing its own thing, the data science team. But I really don't think that's the right approach. I think a fully integrated data science person or team within your Agile structure is the way to make the best possible progress towards your goals.
Sorry to jump in. Real quick show of hands. Does anyone not know what Agile means? All right, we're good to go. Good.
Oh yeah, so teamwork. So I think the first thing is, we speak the same language. I'm not talking about English, Chinese. I'm talking about the language we use in our work. So you see, I came from a software engineer, AI background. So, okay, I talk about APIs, I talk about debugging the things. But for the product manager, they are talking about other KPIs, different language. So it's kind of difficult for these two group of people to work together because we talk different things, right? So we need one guy to build the bridge between these two group of people. It's like a project manager or it's called a BI engineer or whatever, a guy or group of people to bridge this, to group of people. Or we can have some internal training to put them together so we can speak the same language.
So one of the things that I don't think teams do well enough is that, to your point about communication, is that they don't know each other very well. So one of the best things that happened in my early development was we used to have an expression that if you're going to work hard, you got to play hard. And that meant that at lunch, we didn't take a whole hour for lunch. Nobody had time. So what the secretary would go around and get some lunch orders, and then we'd all sit in the conference room, and for 20 minutes, our boss would sit there with us and would regale us with ridiculous stories. Now, we didn't ever talk about business in the conference room. We didn't talk over lunch about what problems we were having solving whatever bug and code we had. We were just laughing together, and we were learning about each other's lives and learning how to talk to each other in an informal way. Sharing stories about your own self means that when you have questions, you don't feel silly going to talk to somebody because you know them. You have a different sense of knowing them. IDEO does a storytelling course that they offer every year, and they're doing it right now. So one of the things that they talk about is that at IDEO, they make sure that everybody in the company learns how to tell stories. And the kinds of stories that they're talking about are being able to tell a story very quickly to be able to warm up and build empathy with each other. Because if you have empathy with somebody and you can show your vulnerability, then it means that other people are willing to help you and willing to help bring you with them on the journey that you're both all experiencing, which is really whatever the success is that your company is trying to achieve.
Absolutely. I'm glad you brought up Agile because we've seen a lot of success with that in certain areas. I would say software developers in particular. They've embraced Scrum, and it's down to a science now. I mean, if we were to say walk out of here and build a clone of QuickBooks accounting software, big project to take on. But I believe a qualified team could map that out and tell you it's going to take 8 months and 6 weeks, if you would call it that way, but they get it done in the amount of time they specify. It's very different for rolling out data science and AI. Take something like a chatbot. There's just an R&D component to it. I wouldn't believe any estimate anyone gave me. Do those same methodologies work, or do we need a new evolution?
Yeah, I actually do think the same methodologies. I do believe that there's more discovery when it comes to things like chatbots and new technologies. In Agile, there's a thing called research spikes, which those of you familiar with Agile probably know. So you're probably spending a lot more time on those research spikes, and what that is basically is, be it a product manager, be it a developer, whoever has a question they're not really sure about, you turn it into a spike, which is basically you define what the thing is you want to learn, and then the acceptance criteria for whether or not you've learned it, and then you go research. So, which is typically the kind of thing in waterfall, you do all that up front. But for things that are newer that you're less familiar with, it's really critical to do that kind of work. But I think overall, chatbots, for example, can absolutely still fit within the framework of Agile, because really what Agile is all about is building something that has value, fast, getting it to production, getting feedback. So a chatbot can absolutely fit within that structure.
I think the challenge for apply Agile model to data-oriented project is, data science project is totally different from traditional software projects. Okay, so we have requirements collection. We have the part for the data collection, how we get the data. We have data integration. We have data cleanup. After we process the whole data set, we have to do feature engineering, and then we do modeling. So you see, the whole project itself is a full cycle, right? So when we do Agile model, so in 2 weeks, how we can guarantee we are making progress for the whole project cycle? I think that is one of our challenge. So I would like to see, the project manager has to split different small parts into details, so we can control, the process for the whole Agile model.
At the end of the day, it's always about managing expectations. So whether it does or doesn't work is really a function of what are the expectations. So if you make time be the expectation as opposed to the output or the quality or the fact that you're experimenting, it makes a big difference. So make sure that whatever expectations that are on the table are ones that you can manage now.
So in terms of transformation, some large companies have the strategy of, let's not do any transformation. Let's wait for small companies to do good work, and then we'll buy them up. And we'll just consume what's good and chew it up and hopefully make something of it. And that is a strategy. Great idea, and run with it. Or can medium business be agile enough? Is enterprise off the table? Where can a lot of the transformations that have come through AI and data science come from?
Well, they come from everywhere, the truth be told. There's an awful lot of organizations that just don't have room for them because they're so busy in a control mode that they don't have the opportunity for experimentation. They don't have the flexibility to be able to adjust and adapt. And that's really more why you see more startups who are experimenting. because they don't have anything other than themselves to prove. An established company has a lot of again, that word expectation. They're people who have who want things on time, and they want it at cost, and they want it, and all those things that make it very difficult for you to interject this unknown of whatever data science may or may not do, which is one of the reasons that Agile is such a very useful tool, and also making sure that you're making small changes, picking a project that may take 5 days today and turning it into something else that will take less time is always a winning proposition. So you can make it happen. It's just a question of getting your management to make some space for it.
Yeah, and I think digital transformation is definitely tougher for larger enterprises, as we've seen. You can look at the statistics on that. So, especially fintech and healthcare, the ones we're most familiar with, are ones that are some of the bigger industries in this country, but also significantly behind. You can look at the big banks, for example. They know there's a problem, which is millennials and Gen Zs are not that interested in staying with one bank. But they're like, well, now what? What's the solution to it? So, there's a recognition of a problem by some, but also maybe not so much the ability to fix it. And the question then is, why can't they fix it? Well, there's lots of things, right? Companies become so big that it's very difficult to change, because you're changing lots of systems, you're changing lots of people, you're changing how people work, you're changing the technologies that you paid lots and lots of money to put in place in some cases. There's basically inertia, is more or less what that is. And the reason why bigger companies oftentimes purchase small companies isn't really the technology. Sometimes it is, but oftentimes you look at Google, for example, it's actually the people. And I personally know quite a few people whose companies have been bought. It's literally just to get the new thinking, the new minds into their companies that are willing to look against the status quo, to think differently, and to build something new. So that's a big reason, I think, why enterprises are doing that. And the reason small companies have the challenges too when it comes to digitally transforming or becoming digital to begin with. Money being one, right? A lot of startups may not have much money to be able to innovate. So in some senses, enterprises are actually far ahead from that perspective. But they do have the will and the drive, and they're starting out from a digital perspective versus enterprises, starting out from a legacy perspective.
Okay, so I think for the large company, every employee, we have a yearly, review. So we have to have some outcome for our daily job. So when I was working with Semantic, we reviewed our security software. So I remember some of our good idea, good project came from interns. The reason they came from interns because it's only a 3 months job. Right? They don't care about failure. We give them assignments. They try new stuff. Use different new stuff, security problems. So I want to see, when we use the new technology, don't care too much about failure. Okay, definitely the majority of them will fail. And then the second thing is, I would say don't care too much. We can start from a small project and a small project and just apply a new technology to try to get a new solution. I think that's my 2 points. Start from a small problem and do not, afraid about failure.
Yeah, good advice. I'm glad you brought up failure, actually, because there's a bit of wisdom somebody gave me once. I don't know where this comes from, but it was fail fast. And I think that is the secret recipe for success in a lot of cases. Just how fast is a hard problem. Do you guys have any metrics for knowing, how and when you decide whether or not some endeavor, some moonshot you've taken is likely to pay off, or if it's something to give up on and move on to the next transformation?
Well, the reality is that most transformation projects are a series of projects. Very few people, you don't build a building overnight. And as a result, you do know whether, in fact, the floor is not working. if you take a look at some of the people who do project management on a large scale, they do something, Atul Gawande writes about this actually in his book, the Checklist Manifesto, which is a great read if you've never read it. He talks about literally the construction industry. He talks about the fact that why is it that you don't see buildings fall down, right? They get blown up, but they don't fall down. And the reason they don't fall down is because things go wrong all the time when you're building a building. The unexpected occurs constantly. And what happens is that the project management teams are really good about making sure that everybody who needs to know and is involved gets brought in to solve the problem together before they agree and then make the adjustments as they work them out. In business, this never happens. If you think about, I worked in large transformation for banks, and I can tell you, we didn't have good success on large transformations unless you had one person who was sheepdogging the entire project from end to end. And they knew every part of the project, and they kept everybody informed every step of the way. So the people who were passing the baton from and to, the people 2 steps ahead knew it was coming, right? And that takes a lot of coordination. So the best thing you can do is really, it's about communications.
I think if you get to the point of certain failure, I guess is the best way of putting it, like what I think you're talking about, I think you've done something really wrong in the process, which is I think kind of what you're referring to as well. So for example, I think it was like 15 years ago or so at this point, but McDonald's, there was a really famous case study of McDonald's shoving in school you probably have heard of, where I think it's over $1 billion they spent on their digital transformation until it got shut down. It's like, well, how did you get to $1 billion without really knowing whether or not this was working or not? I think that in itself is a huge mistake in how you build products or build software solutions. So what I have in mind is that you should take more of a one down approach, but more specifically, think of how growth hacking works. If you guys are familiar with it, you come up with the best possible ideas you have. You have KPI, key performance indicators and metrics against those ideas. You test it quickly. What worked, what didn't work, and then you continue to optimize and optimize and optimize. Versus like, let's go build, some huge improvement, and then 2 years later, you find out you spent $1 billion. That's not the right way to do it. So yes, of course, it's failure, but it's like little failure, or little learning is a better way of looking at it, in my opinion, which is that something may not have gone properly as well as you thought. You learned a lot from it, and then you try something a little bit different. But like a true massive failure, I think is really unacceptable these days. I don't think that is something. If that happens, it means you've done something significantly wrong in terms of your process up until that point.
Yeah, I would like to say again, the data science project is totally different from the software developments. So imagine that, how many roles we have. We have a data scientist, who builds the model, builds the hypothesis and verify it. We have a data engineer who collects the data, process it, guarantee the data quality. Right? We have project manager who define the user, requirement, and also we have engineer who, deploy our, machine learning model to the production line. So when we make the decision to kill one project, so we have to think about, why the failure happened. So what's the problem came from, right? Is the software engineer, data scientist, big data engineer, or product, manager. So I think, that's the difference between, how we can, deal with the traditional software and the data science. So we have to think about where the problem, came from.
Well, we hit the end of our time. So Jason, Michael, Rachel, thank you guys so much for sharing all your thoughts.